The year was 1966. What? No, it wasn't the year that I was born. The year was 1966. Anybody know why? What happened in 1966?
Your 21st birthday.
Your 21st birthday? Oh. So, dude, you're old.
The British invasion.
That did happen in 1966, but we're not talking about the Beatles today. 1966, a phenomenon happened. We didn't realize it when it was happening, but it was quite unbelievable. The fact that something that happened in 1966 would still be going on today. In 1966, a TV series started. It was called Star Trek. You remember it? Well, some of you remember it. Some of you guys weren't even a thought in your parents' eyes at that point in time. But if you ever had a chance to sit back and look and watch the old series from the 1960s, you would have heard the beginning of what happened as they introed the Star Trek movie, as they introed the Star Trek shows. Captain Kirk came on, and he made a statement. Space, the final frontier. Well, you know this. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission to seek out new worlds, to explore new worlds, to seek out new life, to boldly go where no man has gone before. And I don't know what that did in you. I know what it did in me. I mean, I was 6 years old. But watching that, and over the next few years watching it, it was one of those things that stirred up inside of me. Dreams and visions of what that could possibly look like. To boldly believe that you could do anything and be anybody that you wanted to be. You ever remember that? You remember back to the day when the world was your oyster, that anything was possible. I remember watching the men as they landed on the moon. I remember that because I remember it because we were in school, and I thought, man, I want to be an astronaut. Man, I would love to experience the weightlessness, the thrill of riding in a rocket ship up into space, cracking through that barrier. I remember at the age of 8 getting my microscope and thinking I want to be a scientist. I remember, and that continued on throughout my entire life. I remember being on a basketball court in the backyard of the house and dreams and visions of being that go-to guy, the guy on the court. I know you've experienced that. It's either the catching of the football or the touchdown pass, but being there, the ball being thrown to you, the last minute, you turn around, everybody's in your face, everybody's screaming, and you hit that last game-winning jumper. Dreams and visions, all of those things that we grew up with. I remember even into my teen years when I wanted to be a policeman. And watching the shows on television, all the cop shows, and then wanting to be a CIA officer, going undercover, doing the covert things, putting on disguises, which I think carried over into my talks today, as I wear wigs and things like that around here, and Will would agree with that. But I think about all of those things, and I think it happened quite unintentionally, but somewhere along the line, somebody looked at me and they said, Stephen, you want to be an astronaut? You want to be a scientist? You got to understand and know math and physics, and you got to have a love and a desire for that. You don't have that. You want to be a basketball player? Dude, you can't even make the high school team. But in spite of all of that, I still had those dreams. One day I would be found out. One day somebody would see me just shooting. One day I would have that opportunity. But as time went on, dreams died. Visions of greatness passed by. I don't know about you, but I think we all go to that place where we had such big goals and dreams at one time. We really believed what people had told us when we were kids, that we could be and do anything. And then I thought about my spiritual life. As I thought through that process, I go back 5 years ago, and I remember the newness and the excitement and the possibilities that God was going to do big things through me. He had a big plan for me. I was looking for that big thing. Always looking for that chance to step in. It's like, God, had no idea. And I remember my prayer. Initially, it was so bold and so strong and so wide open. Anything was possible. And yet, I think over the years, at certain times in my life, there have been times when my prayers have and my goals have just kind of disappeared. And I find myself in my prayer life in so many ways praying safe prayers. You know, God, thank you for this day. Give me a safe trip. God, bless me, bless my family. God, give me more business. Give me whatever. And I find that the more that my prayers got self-centered, that I became more self-centered. And I think I lost, quite unintentionally, this whole idea of bigness. And then I saw the sun this morning, and I was reminded how big God is. And that I am such a small person, and yet that sun was huge. The bigness. And I think my prayer life, my spiritual life, it's not because God said no. He probably just said not now. But I quit praying for those things. God used me in a big way. In lots of ways, he said, well, why don't we just focus on this one little thing? But God, I want to get on the court. I want to be right there. I want to be in that clutch place to shoot the shot, to win the game. I want to be used like that. So much of the time, I think God's just saying, why don't we focus on this little thing? It's like you're on the practice team. And the practice team practices and goes up and down the court and plays the game just as if you're pretending to play the game, but you never get in the real game. And you're working on your skills and you're working on all the things that God has for you. But I find myself, I just wanted to just walk onto the court, move somebody out of the way, and say, okay, God, here I am. I'm your gift. This is what I am. And so there it was. And my prayers changed. And my relationship with God got smaller and smaller because my dreams, my visions got smaller and smaller. Do you relate to that? All the dreams, all the bigness. And I think what God is saying to us is, I want you to ask me for something big. Test me. I'm a big God. I'm bigger than thank you for this food. I'm bigger than give me a safe trip. I'm bigger than God, would you watch out for my kids? I'm bigger than that. It reminded me of a story back in Acts 3 and 4 of Peter and John. Let me give you a little background on the story before I hit the verses that I want us to focus on today. In Acts 3 and 4, By this time, Jesus had already died on the cross. He had resurrected. The Holy Spirit had already come down in the first couple chapters of Acts. Peter had already walked out. He had preached, and 3,000 people had accepted Christ. The story starts up here when they are on their way to the temple. I don't know how long has passed, but it's not very long. It's probably only 60, 90 days since Jesus has died. And they're on their way to the temple, and there's a lame man. And the lame man calls out to Peter and John. He says, "Give me some silver and gold." And Peter looks at him and says, "Silver and gold we don't have. But what I do have I will give to you. Stand up and walk." And at that instant, the lame man stood up. His power and strength went back into his legs. And the story goes on to tell about him running around the temple, hanging on Peter and John, and just glorifying and praising God for what had happened. Jumping and running around. I can only imagine what that looked like to all of the people. And of course, as a result of that, all of the people had come close to Peter and John. They saw this miracle. They wanted to know what was happening. Well, this stirred up all the things with the priests and the Sadducees and the Pharisees and all of these people that were in charge of the temple area. So they sent over, they took John and Peter, and they took them and put them in jail. The next morning, they showed up. They grabbed them out of jail. They took them before the priest and all of the people in charge of the temple, and they charged them. Do not talk in this name. Do not talk about this name of Jesus. And they were told numerous times, don't go back out there and don't talk about this any longer. So Peter and John left. What they immediately did is what I want to focus on today. What they did was they went back to the group of believers, the first church, and this is the first recorded prayer of the new church. And Peter and John, and the rest of them, this is what they prayed. Now, Lord, consider their threats, and enable your servants to speak your word with great boldness. Stretch out your hand to heal and perform signs and wonders through the name of your holy servant, Jesus. And I thought, I don't know about you, but I think sometimes I experience God and then I go back in that place of fear. I don't have the boldness that I would want to have. If I'd been Peter and John, if I'd been a part of that group that was advising them, you know what I think I would have told them? Why don't we just kind of lay low? All right, let the heat get off. Peter and John, you're too important to this ministry. You guys need to separate. Y'all can't be in the same place at the same time. That would have been my reaction. That's what I would have told them to do. Instead, they came in and they prayed for boldness. Now, I want to give you an idea of what boldness is. Let me give you the definition of boldness. Boldness is the willingness to risk shame or rejection, to do something despite the risk that come along with it. Let those words sink in. To do something despite the risk that come with it. The willingness to risk shame or rejection. Now, unlike the Monday night guys who didn't say anything to me, this is a bold shirt. Okay? You see this shirt? This is a bold shirt. All right. I had a couple guys come up to me today. And I have to tell you this. Monday night guys didn't say a word. All right. A couple guys came up to me. I hope that shirt is a part of what you're talking about. See, to me, this is a bold statement. You know, years ago, I would have said this was me.